We're working very hard to make everything we're doing militarily, diplomatically, economically, and with our allies and partners to be as effective as we can in what we recognize is not really much time.
That, of course, is National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster saying the U.S. needs to move quickly to address the increasing nuclear threat posed by North Korea. This comes as President Trump will make his first address to the United Nations this week on Tuesday at the annual General Assembly gathering of world leaders here in New York. You know, there's a lot of speculation over how he will respond to the regime's provocative actions and what he will say and propose. For more on this, let's go to Gordon Chang, who's author of The Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World, and is a North Korea expert. Gordon, good to see you.
Thanks, Eric.
What do you expect the president will say on Tuesday?
Well, he's got to talk about North Korea because, if nothing else, the North Koreans are going to be in the front row. So he's got to say something. And I think in order to have an effect, he's got to say something we haven't heard, which means he needs to be specific. Senior officials have been saying that he's also going to talk about accountability, but they haven't told us what that really means. I think he's going to use that opportunity to talk about UN Security Council members not enforcing UN sanctions. So, for instance, China, which has busted the first 7 of the 9 UN sanctions on North Korea. They haven't busted the August 5 and September 11 sanctions, but they're too new.
What's the use of the sanctions if China votes for it and they raise their hand and then they, backroom deals, they don't pay any attention to them?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So for instance, the Chinese made a big deal of not buying North Korean coal this year. They made that announcement on February 18th, but we know that they bought North Korean coal in February after the announcement. They bought coal in April, May, and June.
So they're lying.
Certainly lying. And now I think they're buying coal through third parties, so they're disguising their purchase of North Korean coal. This is something the United States needs to call out.
And what about the latest resolution that supposedly blocks 30% of the oil? Do you think that China will really block 30% of the oil?
It's, that oil goes through a pipeline, the Friendship Pipeline, and it's very hard to see what goes on. If the oil were sent to North Korea in barrels, we could see that in the trucks that cross the bridge at Dandong. But, on a pipeline, it's really hard to monitor.
It's really called the Friendship Pipeline?
Friendship Pipeline.
All right, that tells you all you need to know about China and North Korea.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, the North Korean foreign minister, as you said, will be sitting in the chamber of the General Assembly as the president speaks. This is a couple of days after the president tweeted that Kim Jong-un is Rocket Man. So how do you think Kim Jong-un took that derisive insult? Does it get under his skin? Does he get angry? Or does he say, uh-oh, I got to watch it because I don't know what I'm dealing with here?
I'd like to think it's the latter. But, apart from, helping Elton John with his royalties, it is not something I think that's really going to get at Kim Jong-un. He probably likes the attention. What he needs to hear from from President Trump is a specific threat that he'll carry out. He's got, President Trump has got to make the North Korean leader believe that he has the political will to actually impose costs on not only North Korea, but its friends, China and Russia.
Here's what H.R. McMaster also said in the interview today on Fox News Sunday, dealing with what potentially could happen. Here he is.
This regime is so close now to threatening the United States and others with a nuclear weapon that we really have to move with a great deal of urgency on sanctions, on diplomacy, and on preparing, if necessary, a military option.
Sanctions, diplomacy, preparing, if necessary, a military option. Is there really a military option? We've talked about, 24 million people in Seoul. I mean, it could be just totally devastating and the cost just unimaginable.
But there is one military option people don't talk about, and that is we need to stop and interdict North Korean ships on their way to Iran selling missiles. The North Koreans sell the chemical weapons that Assad uses on his children, and a lot of this goes by ship. Now, the Security Council on September 11th did not give us the authority to board ships without permission of the ship owner. But at this point, we don't need that authority, Eric, because the North Koreans have given it to us themselves. At least 3 times last decade, they abrogated the Korean War armistice. That means there's no agreement not to use force. If there's no agreement, it means we can board those ships for weapon searches. And the Security Council itself has said that these weapons transfers out of North Korea are against sanctions.
So therefore, it could be potentially internationally legal to board those ships?
I think so. I think we have all the authority that we need.
And what if Kim Jong-un retaliates because of that? That would certainly be provocative, or he would see it that way.
Well, he certainly would. But on the other hand, we've already we can't let this trade go on. And I don't think he's going to try to end his regime because because that's what would happen if he retaliated against Seoul just because we boarded ships. You know, in the past, we've boarded those ships, or the Spanish have boarded the ships for us. That occurred during the Bush administration. The Kim regime did not retaliate then, and I think that this is, in their view, not going to be enough to start World War III.
So it seems that they go up to the edge. You know, they threaten Guam, and then now they have a missile that can reach Guam, but when they fire it, they don't fire it toward Guam.
Yeah, they fired it over Japan, though, and that, of course, was provocative. You know, Kim Jong-un now thinks he has the initiative, and what concerns me is that because he's become so bold, when he's confident of his arsenal, he could do something and really miscalculate. So we need to take the initiative away from him in some way. You know, people say shoot down a missile, or I think board ships, but we got to stop this regime, because right now it's not afraid of the United States, it's not afraid of the international community.
A naval blockade, perhaps a possibility. Gordon Chang, as always, Gordon, good to see you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you for your insight. We'll see what the president says on Tuesday.